Guys, today I'm going to show you the best artifact sets and stats you can aim for your 5-star characters. Just to get this topic right out of the way first, let's talk the Marechaussee set. This set became very popular on characters ever since Furina came out. And the reason is that if the character that is holding this set has any kind of HP change, is going to receive very significant crit rate buffs. And of course, Furina makes fulfilling this requirement pretty much trivial on any carry. So first, I'm going to make a tier list for the Marechaussee set to rank how good it is for each carry, and in doing so, I'm also going to show you the alternatives for set carries. So I'm going to make the guide for the on-field characters first, and then I'll handle the off-field characters in the second part of the video. First one is Raiden. Raiden can be played with Furina on double Hydro teams mostly, although you can also do some things with Quick Bloom teams, I guess. And she's a pretty interesting case right away because her signature set, the Emblem of Severed Fate, is comparable to the Marechaussee set on Furina teams. Raiden is a pretty tricky character to build in general because her builds really vary a lot depending on the weapon or the team she's on. For example, on Quicken, the Gilded Dream set also becomes pretty good. For the main pieces stats, it also varies a lot because depending on the weapon you're using, one stat can benefit you more than the others. For example, with Engulfing Lightning, Energy Recharge becomes much better on Raiden because it also translates to more attack, so it's complicated. I can mostly give you general guidelines here, but I suggest you to use an optimizer for these very complicated characters. But yeah, for the list, she goes to side grade with Furina. Before I move on, please consider subbing to my channel if you haven't done it yet and you enjoy my content, because it really helps me notice your support. Hu Tao. She's a character that can be used with Furina on double Hydro teams mostly, and in those situations the Marechaussee set is better than all the other options. And honestly, even if you're not using Furina with Hu Tao, since she self-sacrifices HPs, maintaining the effects of the Marechaussee set isn't really impossible. But if you can't, then the Crimson Witch set and the Shimenawa set are pretty much better. For the main pieces stats, you mostly go for EM Sands, unless you're using a high EM weapon like the Fjords or Dragon's Bane, in which case the HP Sands is slightly better. But yeah, overall, if you're using Furina on your teams, the Marechaussee set is pretty much a no-brainer. Cyno. Cyno is a character that can be used on Furina teams on Quick Bloom, which makes things quite interesting because Hyper Blooms don't benefit from crit rate, of course, so his other options like Thundering Fury or Gilded Dreams are very competitive. Honestly, it's still pretty impressive for the Marechaussee set to compete with other sets even in this scenario, but overall the Thundering Fury set is the staple on Cyno, I would say, since it makes the energy requirements much easier to manage. For the main pieces stats, you generally go for an EM Sans, although attack can become somewhat competitive in Quicken teams, but for Quick Bloom teams, EM is the way to go. And if you play him in double Electro Quick Bloom teams like with Visual or Kugi, then his energy requirements get lower and the benefits of Thundering Fury get slightly worse, but it remains a very competitive option anyway. Ayaka. Ayaka is quite the interesting case because she has a signature set, the Blizzard Strayer, that gives her more crit rate than the Marechaussee set would when she's facing frozen opponents, but when she isn't, like for example when she's facing bosses, then it's the other way around, the Marechaussee set is better. Honestly, overall, when you're using Furina, I would probably use the Marechaussee set on Ayaka because it's just more consistent. Regarding the stats, she's pretty much standard because she wants attack, damage bonus, crit. The only peculiar thing you have to focus on are the energy requirements that can get pretty high. Overall, I would consider the Marechaussee set the best option for Ayaka with Furina because it's the most consistent one, simply. Itto. Itto can be played with Furina on his mono Geo teams, with Goro acting as a healer that is not great, so I wouldn't really recommend this team, but it's an option. And in that scenario, the Marechaussee set is better than the Husk set. They also recently released the Echoing Wood set, the Navia signature, that buffs the active character's geo damage bonus when he has a Crystallite Shield after using an Elemento skill. That is a nice alternative to the Husk set, but just less consistent. Builds wise, he massively benefits from defense, so that's the stat for the Sans. And energy wise, it depends. 140 is a good spot to stop at in the Mono Geo teams, but they can go higher or lower depending on what your exact team is, I guess. And 140 is a good stopping spot though. Next, Xiao, which is a very interesting case because technically the Marechaussee set is the best in slot on him when he's played with Furina, and that's even more so the case now with Xianyun coming out since she gives flat buffs to plunge attacks and those don't benefit from attack bonuses, so they won't benefit from the Vermilion set effects, which just makes the Marechaussee set better. But honestly, he's a character that gets a lot of crit rate for free, the Ascension stat, weapons like that match, the Primordial Jade Wing Spear. He just gets a lot of crit rate, which makes the Marechaussee set crit rate stat pretty hard to manage. For the rest, he wants pretty standard builds. You build him with attack, anemo damage bonus, crit, and then some energy recharge substats. Don't know where to put him honestly, because on one hand, when he's played with weapons like Homa, the Marechaussee set is definitely the best in slot, but in some situations it isn't. So I will put him in side grade. Ayato. Ayato can be played with Furina on the very obvious triple Hydro teams, in which case the Marechaussee set is just a side grade to the Echo set, his signature. The Nymph's Dream set is also pretty close. The reason honestly is that since Ayato is a unit that doesn't have very long uptime, the Marechaussee set doesn't have enough time to be stacked and gain enough of an advantage over these other sets that as a baseline are pretty damn great though. Builds wise, again, pretty standard, and for the most part he doesn't really want much energy recharge, especially on the double, triple Hydro teams with Furina, but if you play him as a burst DPS like on Nilou teams, then he might want some, and an energy recharge stance is pretty useful. Kokomi, pretty funny. Her passive really makes it hard for her to crit, and while the Marechaussee set gives her enough crit rate that it becomes technically possible, it's nowhere near being an optimal choice. On her, if you play her as a carry on the double triple Hydro teams, the Clam set is just much better than all the other options. That will be the HP and Hydro damage bonus combinations, or HP and HP, or even the base pass that recently came out. Stats wise, she wants HP, Hydro damage bonus and healing bonus. Healing bonus because thanks to her passive she converts the stat to normal and charge attack damage bonus, which is great. For the most part, when she's played as a carry, she doesn't want energy recharge. It's mostly for the supportive roles where she's off field, in which case the artifact sets like Tenacity of the Miralith become more useful because she is in a supportive role, so buffing the team is more important. Honestly, I would not even rank her here because it's just pointless, so let's move on. Wriothesley doesn't need Furina for the Marechaussee set to be playable on him, and of course it's the best choice. He does have a pretty competitive alternative in the Blizzard Strayer that can potentially be better when he's facing frozen opponents, but for the same reason I explained for Ayaka, the Marechaussee set is just more consistent, so in my opinion is always better. Shimenawa is also an option, but it's just much worse compared to the Marechaussee. Stats wise, the Sans depends on where you're playing him, so for example on male teams he wants an Elemental Mastery Sans, otherwise an Attack Sans, and for the rest pretty standard. Before I move on, I want to talk to you all about Reverse 1999. It's a pretty nice RPG game with sci-fi elements and it's set in the 20th century. The context is that of an alternate Earth whose time has strangely started flowing backwards due to a catastrophe that happened on the last day of 1999. The gameplay of this game is very nice because it's an RPG that is quite easy to understand but interesting nonetheless, which means it's great for both the newbies and the veterans of the genre. Also, thanks to its time travel structure, you will be able to meet a lot of characters from different timelines, and this makes the game design very versatile. Patch 1.3 has recently launched, so it's probably the best time to start playing. The game is available on Google Play, iOS, and even PC. When starting, you will be able to gain up to 73 free summons, and you will also be able to get a guaranteed 6-star within the first 30 summons. So make sure to follow the link in the description below to download the game. Lyney. Same case, he doesn't need Furina to use the Marechaussee set, and it's the best option on him overall. Stats wise, quite standard, he wants attack, pyro damage bonus and crit, and he also wants to build some energy recharge to burst consistently, but it's not really much. Klee. Klee is actually pretty similar to Lyney in that she's a pyro character that can use Lava Walker, but the Marechaussee set is just better when she's paired with Furina. She's mostly used with Furina on those mono pyro teams with Furina on top that is basically a front vape team where Furina is vaping, and yeah, in that situation the Marechaussee set is by far the best choice on Klee. Main stats wise, again, pretty standard, and for the substats she doesn't really want any kind of energy recharge on these pyro heavy teams, so she's pretty easy to build. Wanderer. Unlike his anemo friend Xiao, building the Marechaussee set is easier on him because he doesn't really have as many crit rate weapons, and when it's paired with Furina, it is his best in slot. Builds wise, again, pretty standard. Attack, damage bonus, crit, and energy wise, he really doesn't need a lot to burst every rotation, and even if he's not able to, so he bursts every other rotation, it's not the end of the world. Ganyu. When it comes to freeze, the argument is the same as Ayaka. The Blizzard Slayer can be technically better, but the Marechaussee set is more consistent. But with Ganyu, you also have to consider that she's playable on melt teams much more consistently, in which case the Marechaussee set is still the best option to me. Like, it's considerably better than the Wanderer's troop. Stats wise, pretty much the usual. She wants attack on the freeze comps, while she wants elemental mastery on the melt comps, and then damage bonus and crit. Energy wise, when she's played as a carry, she really gets away with little, while when she's played as a burst DPS, then she might want some, and in these roles, her best artifact sets are the Noblesse set or the Emblem of Severed Fate set, so sets that buff her elemental burst and the whole team. Yoimiya can be used with Furina on the vape teams mostly. It's not that great of an option, but it is one, and in those scenarios the Marechaussee set is the best in slot. She also has some pretty great alternatives like the Shimenawa set, the Echo set that is pretty surprisingly very competitive with Shimenawa, but overall the Marechaussee set is the best. Stats wise, pretty obvious again. Attack sans when you don't play her on vape teams, elemental mastery sans when you do, then pyro goblet, then crit, and that's it. Haitham. This is a pretty good occasion for me to say that I've been wrong. Like when I made the Haitham video guide with Furina and I said that the Marechaussee set wasn't better than the Gilded Dreams, I was wrong. I made a mistake in my calculations there. Overall, when she's played on Quick Bloom teams, the Marechaussee set is pretty much always better, and the Gilded Dreams isn't even that much better than double EM artifact set, so stat-wise, Elemental Mastery Sand, Tendro Goblet, Crit Circlet, and for the energy, he doesn't need a lot because he plays in very long rotations, so he has plenty time to get particles, and he doesn't need a lot of energy. Navia. She can be played with Furina on the hyper teams, it's an option, and in those situations the Marechaussee set is a side grade to her signature set, the Echoing Woods. Golden Troop is just considerably below when she's played as an on-field carry, in which case the set effects just get really nerfed, but when she's played as a sub DPS that is still a pretty relevant role, then the Golden Troop becomes much more competitive with Echoing Woods, which is nice. Stats wise, the good old attack, damage, crit for the Sans Goblet Circlet, and for the energy it can fluctuate. She generally will never need a lot in any on-field carry role, but when she's played as a sub DPS, then she definitely will, so you just have to keep this in mind. Eula. Furina actually makes Eula's best teams to me, so the Eula, Furina, Mika teams, and in these scenarios the Marechaussee set is a side grade to the Pale Flame set. Honestly, not even that surprising, because the Pale Flame set is pretty damn great. Stats wise, the main thing to keep in mind with Eula is obviously the energy. She will need 140 or 150 energy recharge most of the time, or even higher, so energy recharge sans is not a bad option, but for the most part she can use attack sans and then damage bonus and crit. Neuvillette, pretty obviously always best in slot regardless of Furina. It's just much better than all the other options. The stat situation is probably more interesting for Neuvillette than others because you can actually use an HP circlet without losing much damage, if any at all actually. For the rest, pretty regular. The energy recharge situation is pretty stable for him. When he's played on double hydro teams with Furina, he just doesn't need a lot, like a very low energy requirements. If he's not, then they can reach even 140 in the worst case scenarios, but it's manageable. Then you have characters that don't really synergize with Furina on their teams that much. No Furina. And these will be characters like Child, Yae. Yae, I guess Quick Bloom can be argued for her, but for the most part, no. For Child, he has got a new best in slot set right before Fontaine, the Nymph's Dream, that is better than the Heart of Depth and any combination of Hydro damage bonus and attack, or burst damage bonus and attack, or whatever. Stat-wise, attack damage bonus crit again, although an Elemental Mastery Sand can be pretty interesting if you want a nice elemental burst and the energy requirements are pretty low. Then Yae, that is probably the most varied character on this list. That's because she's probably the only one here that has two main roles, off-field and on-field, that are both pretty much equally relevant. For on-field, the best choice is Gilded Dreams, that is better than the Golden Troop set, even though her main source of damage is the Elemental skill, and that's because when she's played on-field, the Golden Troop set is just worse than usual, and then the 2-piece damage bonus, 2-piece attack or Elemental Mastery option. For off-field, the situation is reversed, because the Golden Troop becomes by far the best option, and then the Gilded Dreams and the others. Stats wise, attack sands or elemental mastery sands are both pretty nice. Elemental mastery also because her elemental skill gets buffed by her passive depending on how much elemental mastery she has. Energy wise, you would expect Yae to need a lot because she has a 90 energy ghost burst, but the reality is much different. When she's played on field with Fischl as a sub DPS, for example, on Quicken teams, she just gets enough electro particles to regain enough energy even with low energy recharge, and when she's played off field, she really doesn't want to burst every rotation. So basically, energy recharge is really not needed on her. And of course, I forgot about the 5-star standard characters for this list as well. Damn. But thankfully this time, thanks to some post-production magic, I can add them. Tighnari is only played with Furina on his Quick Bloom teams that are actually pretty nice, and in those situations the Marechaussee set is slightly better than the Gilded Dreams and the Wanderer's Troop. Besides that, he wants an Elemental Mastery Sans, Dendro Goblet Crit Circlet, and he really doesn't want much energy recharge. I'm considering catching the same as Yae, in the sense that she can technically be used with Furina on the Quick Bloom teams, but I don't really see it that much, honestly, personally. And for the rest, the Thundering Fury set is just kind of a must on her. It allows her to spam the elemental skill more, which means more energy, and more Electro Infusion, which is just instrumental for her. Diluc is played with Furina on the Vape teams, and he has access to the Crimson Witch set, which is pretty competitive with the Marechaussee set, but it's worth mentioning that the Marechaussee set can compete with the Crimson Witch set without having to spam the elemental skill, which might be useful when Xianyun comes out and Diluc gains the plunge spam playstyle, in which case spamming the elemental skill at the start might not be the best thing to do. Stats wise, it's mostly elemental mastery sands if he's vaping, attack sands if he's not, then Pyro Goblet, Crit Circlet, and very low energy requirements. So overall, the Marechaussee set is, for the most part, at the very least, a very competitive option for all characters, but it's worth mentioning that they don't have to be played with Furina necessarily, because most of them have many team options. So basically, even though the Marechaussee set can be the best option on many of them, the alternatives are still very valuable because Furina won't be on their team every time. So now let's take a look at characters that aren't enslaved in the Marechaussee set in any scenario. Furina, she has a signature set that released in Fontaine, the Golden Troop set, that is pretty obviously her best in slot. Like, alternatives aren't even close, honestly. The Golden Troop is just much better. Regarding her stats, she wants an HP Sans, an HP Goblet most of the time, and a Crit Circlet. The only situations where she might not want to use an HP Goblet are when she's using a high HP weapon or when she has a Constellation 2 that gives her a lot of HP for free. Energy wise, on double Hydro teams, she will generally need around 160, otherwise they can go as high as 200 or even a bit higher. Nahida, the second supportive Archon. She is pretty straightforward in a way because she really wants to use the deep put set most of the time. While it's not the best choice for her own damage, it is the best choice for the rest of the team most of the time. But if you decided to give it to another character on the team, then Golden Troop and Gilded Dreams become very good option for her. She can also use the Tenacity of the Millilith set to further buff the team at the cost of her own damage, but since her AoE damage can be quite significant in my opinion, it's not really worth it. Stats wise, Elemental Mastery Sands and Circlet most of the time are the way to go, and the Goblet can vary between Dendro damage bonus and Elemental Mastery. Elemental Mastery can be better if you want to increase her buffing capabilities for the whole team, while Dendro damage bonus is better for her own damage. Energy recharge wise, I would settle at 130 for most uses. Then Yelan, her best artifact set is the Emblem because it magnifies her elemental burst most, but the combination of HP and damage bonus sets can be good as well. Specifically, other artifact sets give more emphasis to the elemental skill damage, which can be great, especially at Constellation 1, since the elemental skill is a lot of front load. Stats wise, she definitely needs a lot of energy recharge, and if you play her on double, triple Hydro teams, you can get away with an HP sense, but if you don't, you will need around 220 energy recharge, and in that case, using anything that isn't an energy recharge sense becomes very difficult. Albedo. He recently received a better artifact set than the Husk set, which is the Golden Troop, which is just perfect for his kit since he mostly just deals elemental skill damage, and for the rest he is pretty standard to build. He needs no energy recharge because his burst is detrimental to the rotation, so just build him with defense, geo damage bonus and crit. Baizhu. Baizhu is generally a unit that doesn't have a specific best set because he has a lot of options that benefit the team. For example, the Instructor can be the best if you play him on quickened teams where you can refresh the effects of the set consistently, so for example on quick swap quickened teams. Clam and Days Past are the most versatile choices because they just add damage to Baizhu, which is pretty much very flexible. Stats wise, just go HP all the way to increase his buffing capabilities, although focusing on the energy recharge is also important because he can need a lot in the rotation. Very similarly, Zhongli is a unit that only needs HP pieces, but unlike Baizhu, no energy recharge because his burst is not nearly as useful, so you don't really need it to use in the rotation, and it's mostly a damage loss. For the artifact sets, it doesn't have many great options. The Tenacity of the Millilith is pretty much consistently the best one because it adds buffing effects to his kit. The Instructor can also be good in some situations like Dendro or Amplifying Reaction teams, otherwise just go for HP pieces. Kazuha, pretty obvious one. For him, the Very Distant Veneer is an obvious option because it is an Anemone unit, and of course elemental mastery pieces for his main role, so supporting. Energy recharge wise, his requirements are often underestimated, but they can get pretty damn high. Generally, if you can use his elemental skill twice a rotation, he will only need around 150 to 170, but if you can't, and if you use him as the solo Anemo unit, you will need even more than 200, which is a lot. Venti. Just like Kazuha is an Anemo unit, so the Very Distant Veneer is pretty much a guarantee on him. Stats wise, he doesn't have an elemental mastery scaling buff like Kazuha, so in some situations you can build him with attack, damage bonus, crit builds, and his damage will be comparable and in some situations higher to the elemental mastery builds, but the elemental mastery builds are just more versatile and better in multi-opponent situations, which is where I imagine you would use Venti. Shenhe, pretty straightforward. Her buffing abilities scale of attack, like the Quill's scale of attack, so just give her as much attack as possible. Her personal damage is just not worth focusing on, and the only other thing you need to care about are the energy requirements, which can get pretty high, pretty close to 200 even in double cryo situations. Nilou. Just like for Shenhe, you really only need to care about a single stat to increase her buffing capabilities, and in her case it's HP. For the rest, some energy recharge substats to make her able to burst every rotation, or elemental mastery substats to increase her own bloom damage can be nice, but not instrumental. Mona. Mona is a unit that is generally used for her buff that comes from her burst that doesn't scale from any stat in particular. You really only need to care about energy recharge with her to let her burst consistently, recently. Artifact set wise, just pick anything that fits the theme, like Dino Bless, the Dynasty of the Millelith, Instructor. All of these pieces are good. Jean. Unlike other Anemo units, she doesn't really want elemental mastery pieces because her swirling capabilities are not great, so just focus on attack on her because that's what her hitting scales off. Sets wise, again, the typical Viridian Veneer that is just a must for Anemo units. Also, she can need a lot of energy because her burst has a 80 energy cost. Alright, I'm done for today. Make sure to go check the recent Nahida video I made a few days ago, and again, make sure to check out Reverse 1999 from the link in the description below, and peace!